a stage performer, or you can just use it in your life, you're an entrepreneur.
Right.
It's very important. If you're walking on the street, you're able to see something that most other people cannot see. That is when you become a leader, because you are able to see things others are yet to see.
Right.
That is when you take up a leadership position, because essentially leadership means you're on a perch.
We all take turns
Once you're on a
Dragon Ball Z.
perch, you must
down.
see better than others. So attention is that dimension which will put you on that perch. If your attention has to be very keen about everything, then you should stop discriminating in terms of, I like this person, I don't like this person, this is good, this is bad, this is nice, this is not nice, this is useful, this is not useful. If you do not make any kind of discrimination, you just work on your attention, not about being attentive about something, just being super attentive, not about anything. See, right now if you increase the voltage in this hall where you're sitting, when light comes on, light is not thinking in terms of whom should I focus on. When light comes on, everything that is there in that room will be seen.
Right.
This is important. This is a very important aspect of yogic process, is that we go on working on our attention, that we keep on keying up our attention to a higher and higher level, a higher and higher voltage and intensity. Now, we don't encourage focus, because focus means consolidate all that attention and put it on one person. Suppose you invested your entire focus on one spot and you found nothing worthwhile in that spot, what will you do at the end of your life? This is what is happening to most.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Expansion Pack. I'm your host, Dan F. Man. It's good to be in here. This is DGTA TV. I think my program just messed up. I can't see the screen, but y'all can still see me. Let me play a beat. Get my beat started in the background back here. Hey, there go. So today is another Tech Tuesday. I don't know if I'm gonna have to restart the broadcast. Usually I just start it and stop it again, but I think we're gonna keep it running for right now. We're gonna go ahead and jump into the motivation for today. Let me see what the topic is real quick. Exploring our capabilities. This is gonna be a good one. I'm gonna try to keep it as interesting as I can keep it. So let's at least get into the motivation. If I can't change the scene, then I'll see what I'm gonna do. Y'all stick around with me, I'll restart it, stop it and restart it again. Alright, let's go. Alright. Motivation for the day. Gotta get a good one. Let's see the most popular. Oh.
I don't know what that dream is that you have. I don't care how disappointing it might have been as you've been working toward that dream.
I guess that worked.
That dream that you're holding in your mind, that it's possible. That some of you already know that it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard changing your life. That in the process of working on your dreams, you are going to incur a lot of disappointment, a lot of failure, a lot of pain. There are moments when you're going to doubt yourself and say, God, why is this happening to me? I'm just trying to take care of my children and my mother. I'm not trying to steal or rob from anybody. Why did this have to happen to me? For those of you that have experienced some hardships, don't give up on your dream. Their rough times are going to come, but they have not come to stay. They have come to pass.
Greatness is not this wonderful, esoteric, elusive, God-like feature that only the special among us will ever taste. You know, it's something that truly exists in all of us.
It's very important for you to believe that you are the one. Most people, they raise a family, they earn a living, and then they die. They stop growing, they stop working on themselves, they stop stretching, they stop pushing themselves. That a lot of people like to complain, but they don't want to do anything about their situation. And most people don't work on their dreams. Why? One is because of fear. The fear of failure. What if things don't work out? And the fear of success. What if they do and I can't handle it? These are not risk takers.
You spend so much time with other people. You spend so much time trying to get people to like you. You know other people more than you know yourself. You studied them. You know about them. You want to hang out like them. You want to be just like them. And you know what? You've invested so much time in them, you don't know who you are. I challenge you to spend time by yourself.
It's necessary that you get the losers out of your life if you want to live your dream. But people who are running toward their dreams, life has a special kind of meaning.
When you become the right person, what you do is you start separating yourself from other people. You begin to have a certain uniqueness. As long as you're following other people, as long as you're being a copycat, you will never ever be the best copycat in the world. But you will be the best you could be. I'm telling you to define your value.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That everybody won't see it. That everybody won't join you. That everybody won't have the vision. It's necessary to know that you are an uncommon breed. It's necessary that you align yourself with people and attract people into your business who are hungry, people who are unstoppable and unreasonable, people who are refusing to leave life just as it is and who want more. The people that are living their dream of finding winners to attach themselves to. The people that are living their dreams are the people that know that if it's going to happen, it's up to them.
If you want to be more successful, if you want to have and do stuff you ain't never done before, number two, I'm asking you to invest in you. To invest in you.
Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. That you don't have to go through life being a victim. And even though you face disappointments, you have to know within yourself that I can do this. Even if no one else sees it for me, I must see it for myself.
This is what I believe, and I'm willing to die for it, period.
No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I'm going to make it.
I want to represent an idea. I want to represent possibilities.
And some of you right now, you want to be, you know what I'm saying, you want to go to the next level. I want to counsel, you know, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor. Listen to me, you can't get to that level. You can't get to the level economically where you want to be until you start investing in your mind. You're not reading books. I'm challenging y'all to go to conferences. I dare you to invest time. I dare you to be alone. I dare you to spend an hour getting to know yourself. When you become who you are, when you become the person that you were created to be, designed to be who you were designed to be, when you become an individual, what you do is you take yourself and you start separating yourself from other people. I challenge you to get to a place where people don't like you, it don't even bother you no more. Why? Because you're not concerned with trying to make them happy, because you're trying to blow up. You're trying to get to the next level. I need you to invest in your mind. Invest in your mind. If you still talk about your dream, if you still talk about your goal, but you have not done anything, just take the first step.
That you can make your parents proud, you can make your school proud, you can touch millions of people's lives, and the world will never be the same again because you came this way. Don't let nobody steal your dream. After we face a rejection and a no, or we have a meeting and no one shows up, or somebody say, you can count on me, and they don't come through. What if we have that kind of attitude? The car's repossessed. Nobody believes in you. You've lost again and again and again. The lights are cut off, but you still look looking at your dream, reviewing it every day, and say to yourself, it's not over until I win.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You
yes, sir.
can live your dream.
Yes, sir. Let's go.
This is Wix Studio, the platform for
Hey, that was
agencies and
good. I'm motivated. What is my phone? We on Tech Tuesday, so I got to do it the right way. Phone capable of. Let's see. Let's go.
Of the 7 billion people on Earth, roughly 6 billion own a cell phone, which is pretty shocking given that only 4.5 billion have access to a working toilet. So how are these popular gadgets changing your body and brain? If you're looking down at your phone right now, your spine angle is equivalent to that of an 8-year-old child sitting on your neck, which is fairly significant considering people's that of a brain. If you're looking down at your phone right now, your spine angle is equivalent to that of an 8-year-old child sitting on your neck, which is fairly significant considering people spend an average of 4.7 hours a day looking at their phone. This, combined with the length of time spent in front of computers, has led to an increase in the prevalence of myopia or nearsightedness in North America. In the 1970s, about 1/4 of the population had myopia, where today nearly half do, and in some parts of Asia, 80 to 90% of the population is now nearsighted. And it can be hard to put your phone down. Take for example the game Candy Crush. As you play the game, you achieve small goals, causing your brain to be rewarded with little bursts of dopamine, and eventually you're rewarded in the game with new content. This novelty also gives little bursts of dopamine and together create what is known as a compulsion loop, which just happens to be the same loop responsible for the behaviors associated with nicotine or cocaine. Our brains are hardwired to make us novelty seeking, and this is why apps on our phones are designed to constantly provide us with new content, making them hard to put down. As a result, 93% of young people aged 18 to 29 report using their smartphone as a tool to avoid boredom, as opposed to other activities like reading a book or engaging with people around them. This has created a new term, nomophobia, the fear or anxiety of being without your phone. We also see a change in brain patterns. Alpha rhythms are commonly associated with wakeful relaxation, like when your mind wanders off, whereas gamma waves are associated with conscious attentiveness. And experiments have shown that when a cell phone is transmitting, say during a phone call, the power of these alpha waves is significantly boosted, meaning phone transmissions can literally change the way your brain functions. Your smartphone can also disrupt your sleep. The screen emits a blue light which has been shown to alter our circadian rhythms, diminishing the time spent in deep sleep, which is linked to the development of diabetes, cancer, and obesity. Studies have shown that people who read on their smartphone at night have a harder time falling asleep and produce less melatonin, a hormone responsible for the regulation of sleep-wake cycles. Harvard Medical School advises the last 2 to 3 hours before bed be technology-free, so pick up a book before bed instead. Of course, smartphones also completely change our ability to access information, most notably in poor and minority populations. 7% of Americans so pick up a book before bed instead. Of course, smartphones also completely change our ability to access information, most notably in poor and minority populations. 7% of Americans are entirely dependent on smartphones for their access to the internet. A 2014 study found that the majority of smartphone owners use their phone for online banking, to look up medical information, and searching for jobs. So while phones are in no way exclusively bad and have been part of a positive change in the world, there's no denying that they are changing us. But many successful people have now decided to take smartphone vacations in order to increase productivity.
Yes, sir.
In our new
Now, that
ASAP
sounds
Thought
good.
video, we break down the top 6 reasons you should take a smartphone vacation and how it could benefit your life.
Hey, y'all ever heard of this? I ain't never heard of this. Take a smartphone vacation. Bruh. Let me think of how I could do that. Only check it at certain times. And when could I do that? Would it be a weekend? Okay. Oh, I ain't at the video. Sorry. I'm thinking I'm clicking the video back on. Sorry, I had to think on live.
right now. And subscribe for more weekly science videos.
Hold on. Let me see.
At Mint Mobile, we're always looking for innovative ways to save you money, so you can keep paying $15 a month for premium wireless.
Let me see.
In the US alone, there's over 500 million devices in homes connected to the internet. This is about 5.7 devices per household. I, for one, am completely dependent on my phone. I use it for bike routes, to get Ubers everywhere, to Snapchat my entire life. Follow me. But do you think it could be beneficial to give up our phone every once in a while? Are there maybe some scientific reasons why we should take cell phone vacations? If only there were more hours in the day is something that we all say. The average American spends 4.7 hours per day on their phone. That's 1/3 of your awake time spent tapping away on your phone. Of course, your phone is integral to accomplishing a lot of tasks. And just because you're on your phone doesn't mean that you're not doing something else.
Right.
But if you think about all the time that we all spend aimlessly scrolling through different apps, what are some other things that we could be doing with our time to be more productive? Giving up your phone may help you de-stress. Yay. Increased communication due to technology makes it really hard to detach from our jobs during off hours. We are expected to be accessible and responsive at all hours of the day, but researchers are starting to figure out that this could actually take a toll. Psychological detachment from work is important to rejuvenating yourself and being excited for the next day.
I don't want people, just because psychologists and scientists is saying stuff now, to be like, oh, well, they're saying it, so it's cool now. Fuck out of here, nigga. I've been saying that. Anybody knows you don't want to just be working 24 hours a day. Everybody knows that.
Responsive at all hours of the day, but researchers are starting to figure out that this could actually take a toll. Psychological detachment from work is important to rejuvenating yourself and being excited for the next day. And researchers found that those who actually took breaks when they went home were less stressed than those who didn't. Researchers have found that the average social media user will scroll through around 285 pieces of content each day, and this roughly equates to 54,000 words. Dr. Levitin at McGill University explains how every status update you read or text message you send is competing for resources in your brain. All of this information could potentially make it harder for you to remember where you last put your passport. On top of this, technology is actually speeding up our perception of time. One study found that those who are more often on their smartphones would overestimate the amount of time that has passed compared to those who use their smartphones less often. They would think an hour had passed when really it had only been 50 minutes. This perception difference can cause those who are on their smartphones all the time to feel stressed, as if time is always running out, compared to those where McGill University explains how every status update you read or text message you send is competing for resources in your brain. All of this information could potentially make it harder for you to remember where you last put your passport. On top of this, technology is actually speeding up our perception of time. One study found that those who are more often on their smartphones would overestimate the amount of time that has passed compared to those who use their smartphones less often. They would think an hour had passed when really it had only been 50 minutes. This perception difference can cause those who are on their smartphones all the time to feel stressed, as if time is always running out, compared to those who maybe use their cell phone less often. Your smartphone may be making you a jerk. Researchers at the University of Maryland found that even when they gave participants just a short period of time on their cell phones, they were less likely to help another person than a control group. For example, the smartphone using participants were more likely to turn down volunteer opportunities. So why is this happening? The researchers think it might have to do with our human need for social connectedness. Being on our smartphone allows us to be connected to others. So once that need for belonging is met, it reduces our ability to engage in empathy and also engage in helping others. There are many public figures coming out now and speaking about the positivity of using a flip phone, and it's not just Adele. For example, writer Zadie Smith gave up her smartphone to help curb her internet addiction and become more productive. Young and amazing inventor Anne Makasinski has a flip phone because she says you have more time to create when you have less. Okay, so going to a flip phone is a little bit too much for me, but what about a smartphone vacation one day every week? Writer-director Tiffany Schlain suggests a technology Shabbat, in which her and her family give up their phones for 24 hours once a week. You don't have to
Nah,
be
that's
Jewish
good.
or even religious to do something like this. And Tiffany Schlain says that after this 24 hours, it just makes her love and adore her phone even more. So thinking about how often you are on your phone, do you think that there is a benefit in you giving it up every once in a while? Let us know in the comments below, and follow me on Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter, and subscribe here
it
to ASAP
definitely
Thought for
is.
more amazing videos. Peace.
Oh, it definitely is a benefit to giving up your stuff.
I have 12 emails, 30 messages, and a proposal due by...
Hold on, give me a second. But think of everything that your smartphone does. I love it. That don't mean I couldn't give it up. But still, nah, we got to be reasonable here on Expansion Pack. We ain't going to just live on one side of the coin because it seems nice. So we all know the effects of the smartphone on us as far as looking down, nearsightedness, what else did they say? Attention span, all of those things. We all know those effects because we all have smartphones at some point or have used them. If you haven't in 2025, then I don't know. But it's about discipline at this point, and you got to be disciplined enough to know that, hey, I need to put it down at this time. Maybe I need to take a break from it. And I never thought about it until just seeing that. And now I'm thinking about it. And now I'm like, hey, how productive am I? Let me notice every time I use my phone from now on. All right, let's go back. What is your phone capable of?
Of the 7
Let's go. I don't want to see that. Phone buying guide. Well, let's go. CNET.
CNET's team has spent years. Do you want to?
Let's see what's up. CNET.
Do you want a new iPhone, the latest Samsung Galaxy, perhaps a futuristic folding phone, or just something much more affordable? Well, the dizzying number of options from a huge number of different phone brands means that it has never been more complicated to figure out exactly what you need. So to help you spend your money in the best possible way, I have put together my top tips when it comes to shopping for a new phone. Let's dive in. Understanding exactly what you need from your phone will help narrow down your choices and make sure that you spend your money exactly where it should be spent. One of the main reasons to buy any of today's top flagship phones is usually because of the much better camera performance. But if you're really not that into photography, you can save yourself a bundle and look further down the range. If you watch a lot of video or play a lot of games on the go, then you will benefit from a larger display. Perhaps you've been enticed by those futuristic new foldables with their bending displays. Now they can be great if you want a phone that can also fold out into a much larger screen like a tablet. And sure, it's quite fun having something that is cutting edge technology, but they're typically a lot more expensive than their non-folding counterparts, so they are not a good option to look towards if you're shopping on a budget. So before you accidentally waste your money, make sure you figure out exactly what features you have used most on your old phone to determine exactly what you'll need on your new one. Previously, buying a budget phone meant suffering with frustratingly slow performance and sacrificing all of those cool features that you would expect to find on more expensive phones. These days, that is much less the case, with even some of the most budget phones on the market offering innovative features like multi-lens cameras and 5G connectivity. The mid-range sector is hotter than ever right now, with companies like Google and Samsung, among others, offering superb phones that tick all of the boxes that you would expect, but coming with much more affordable price tags than their flagship siblings. So that means that you can pick up a phone that will let you comfortably tackle all of your everyday essentials, enjoy some gaming, some video streaming, and let you take some great looking photos, all at a price that shouldn't break the bank. So don't think that you have to spend flagship levels of money to get a phone that'll tackle what you need it to do. Think of it like buying a new car. Sure, a Ferrari might seem exciting and fast, but a decent Nissan will still get you where you need to go, and it will leave you plenty of money in the bank to put fuel in it. Android phones typically receive about 3 to 4 years of updates, but that is steadily increasing. So why is that important? Well, if a phone no longer receives security updates, then it is vulnerable to hacking and all kinds of other malicious attacks, and therefore is not safe to use. So a phone that's guaranteed to get at least 5 years of security updates will still be safe to use in 5 years' time. So that means you'll need to spend less money needlessly upgrading your phone in that time period. It's better on your wallet, and it keeps more phones out of landfill, so it's better for the planet. It's win-win. Google has made particular efforts with its Pixel 8 range to increase its software support period to 7 years, while companies like Fairphone take that even further. Other major brands are still somewhat playing catch-up, but we're certainly seeing improvements. Sadly, some manufacturers do still only offer a couple of years of support, so those phones do have a very limited life ahead of them. Before you buy a phone, check how many years of Android and security updates that phone will receive. If it's less than 4, don't bother. It's easy to find big deals and great discounts on phones during some of the big holidays, including Black Friday and Amazon's Prime Day. And it's not just Amazon that does the great deals. You will find discounts from most of the major retailers, including some of the phone carriers as well. They'll often get in on the action with cut price handsets or bundles, including new headphones. If you're shopping near to these dates, then it could be worth holding off just to see if you can snag yourself a good deal. Of course, these same companies will often have great deals all year round, while many stores and manufacturers will offer further discounts if you trade in an old handset. So it's always worth doing a little bit of research into where you're buying your product from, just to see if you can save a little bit of extra cash. Last year's phones can often be a great deal as well, particularly because many retailers will have a warehouse full of stock that they want to shift in order to make room for the new ones. And what better way to shift that old stock by offering it at a healthy discount. Alternatively, you can look towards used or refurbished models. Phones tend not to age that quickly, so last year's models will still be absolutely capable of handling anything that you would want to throw at them today. And by buying refurbished, you can get essentially a brand new phone, but at a much lower price. Do be more careful though if you're buying several generations old, particularly if you're buying used. While the hardware will often be perfectly fine, if it's out of its software support period, then it's simply not safe to use. It may be that you found a used phone that's still got a couple of years of security updates ahead of it, and if you can pick that up for a decent price, then it could do the job of just keeping you going for a couple of years. Just make sure you keep an eye on when that security support ends. iOS or Android? The age-old question. Now, I am not going to say which one is better because, let's be honest, they both have their advantages. iOS tends to be a bit easier to use, particularly if you're new to the world of smartphones, whereas Android does offer a lot more customizability. Customization. But if you've been using an iPhone for some time already, perhaps you've also got an iPad or a MacBook or an Apple TV, then odds are you've already probably invested quite a lot of money and effort into Apple's ecosystem. Maybe you've bought apps or services or other iCloud syncing things that just mean that it's going to be easier if you stick with iOS. Similarly, if you've bought a load of Android apps and you've got all your Google accounts synced on a device, then you will find it easier to remain on that side of the fence. Otherwise, it is pretty simple to swap, and you can find some great guides on how to do exactly that on CNET. CNET's team has spent years poring over everything the technology industry has to offer, so it's safe to say that we know a thing or two about what makes a good phone. Our reviews are exhaustive, testing every part of a phone, including its battery, its cameras, its display, processor, waterproofing, and of course just how it feels to hold. So before you splash your cash, make sure you read our verdict. Finally, whatever handset you decide to go for, make sure you buy from a trusted source. And to keep it working properly for longer, you should probably also consider getting a case and a screen protector as well. Good luck with your shopping. You can, of course, find endless information about all of the best phones and the best deals by heading to CNET now.
That's what's up. What is my computer?
With the Amex Platinum Card, you can earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels. So next time you're ready to explore someplace new, you're set up for the perfect solo trip. Whether you're out on a new adventure or
CNET back for the win.
Microsoft has been very firm on Windows 11's hardware requirements. Let's take a look at what laptops and desktops will be able to run it.
Nah.
Often referred to as the brain of the computer, I personally don't like this description because really your entire computer is just a brain. Like RAM.
Alright, here we go.
If you work with computers, you've likely heard terms like RAM, hard drive, and processor mentioned by tech support or others who are more interested in what goes on inside of a computer's case. If you've always wondered what the various components of your computer are for, but have never really had the time to look into it, then this video is just for you. While each one of these components is complex enough to spend a lifetime learning about, I'm going to give a very broad and general overview. A typical desktop computer comes down to these 7 essential parts: case, power supply, motherboard, CPU, RAM, hard drive, and graphics cards. These are the fundamental parts of any desktop computer. It may seem daunting at first, so let's separate these into 2 categories: simple ones and the more complex ones. For starters, let's look at the case. The case is nothing more than a big hunk of plastic that houses everything else. Some of them have more or less physical space, some of them have different parts where you can put screws in or this or that, but at the end of the day, all the case really does is provide a nice enclosed system for everything else. Next up, we have the power supply. This part of your computer, almost always located on the bottom, is the part that plugs into the wall and provides all of the other parts with the electricity needed to do their thing. You can think of it as an extremely advanced AC adapter. The last of the simple parts to mention is the motherboard. The motherboard is a wide and flat circuit board that all of the other components plug into. It's the part that lets all of these components send electrical currents, composing data, between each other. While not particularly expensive, the motherboard is arguably the most important component because without it, you'd have no electrical currents. Is an extremely advanced AC adapter. The last of the simple parts to mention is the motherboard. The motherboard is a wide and flat circuit board that all of the other components plug into. It's the part that lets all of these components send electrical currents, composing data, between each other. While not particularly expensive, the motherboard is arguably the most important component because without it, you'd have nowhere to put anything else. So that's it for the simple components. Now let's move on to the more complex parts, the ones that deal with data. The 4 main components to keep in mind here are CPU, RAM, hard drive, and graphics card. Now first things first, I'm going to establish some terminology. Keep in mind that CPU is also known as the Central Processing Unit, or processor. These terms all refer to the same thing. They are completely interchangeable. RAM stands for Random Access Memory and is often referred to as just memory. A hard drive is often referred to as a disk drive or storage. And a graphics card is also known as a GPU or Graphics Processing Unit. For this explanation, I'll be using the terms CPU, RAM, hard drive, and graphics card. So let's start with the CPU. The CPU is where your computer does things. It isn't really capable of storing very much data at all, but it's very good at doing things with data. Quickly reading it, arranging it, doing the type of quick and massive calculations needed to run your programs. This is where most of your programs are essentially run from. Arranging it, doing the type of quick and massive calculations needed to run your programs. This is where most of your programs are essentially run from. It's often referred to as the brain of the computer. I personally don't like this description because really your entire computer is just a brain. It's just the center part of your computer's brain. Basically everything that happens in your computer goes through your CPU at some point. Now let's talk about RAM and hard drive at the same time because they have a very unique relationship, which is probably why people often confuse the two. Your hard drive is where all of your data is stored. When your computer tells you you're running low on space, it's because your hard drive is almost full. All of the data that makes up your videos, pictures, documents, project files, or the 3D worlds and models that make up a game are all stored here. While hard drives can store lots of data, they're relatively bad at accessing that data quickly. Everything is accessed through a tiny little wire here, and because most hard drives are made up of spinning disks, your hard drive isn't going to be able to constantly give your CPU the information it needs to run certain programs. That's where RAM comes in. RAM is another form of storage. It stores the exact same kind of data as your hard drive, but RAM sacrifices storage space for nearly instant accessibility. Unlike your hard drive, which sends all of its data through a tiny little thin wire, your RAM is arranged in these long, thin sticks that insert into your motherboard. Think about a storage unit. If you have a massive warehouse with only a thin doorway, it's going to be difficult to get in, find what you need, and get out if it's kind of spread all over the place. You'll have to go through a tiny door. But if you have a long, wide storage shed that's got a big, massive garage composing an entire side of it, you won't be able to store as much, but things are significantly easier to get to. Typically, if your computer has 1,000 gigabytes of storage space in your hard drive, it's likely got about 16 gigabytes worth of RAM. Here's where you put the stuff you own but you aren't currently using, and this smaller one is where you put the stuff that you are using and need to be able to get in and out of quickly. When you run a program or a project file, your CPU identifies what parts of data are needed for that program to run. It pulls them from your hard drive, and then it stores them in your RAM sticks for quick accessibility. This is why when you start a new level of a game, for instance, it has to load. Anytime you see loading, it's loading the data that composes that level from your bulky hard drive into your RAM. From a user's perspective, just follow this rule of thumb. RAM allows you to run intensive programs, while disk space allows you to have more of these programs installed. It also allows you to have more of the data they're referencing, whether it be pictures, videos, or mods. And finally, we get to the graphics card.
Let's go.
With all of the calculations going on in your computer to turn a bunch of numbers that basically come down to ones and zeros into a constantly updated three-dimensional world, the final and most important and arguably most difficult step is to display that on your monitor. It's possible for your motherboard to do this alone, but it's not going to look good. And it's certainly not going to be able to do much. Your graphics card is essentially an entire computer in and of itself, dedicated to the sole task of figuring out what pixels need to light up on your screen, in what color, and at what time. If you were playing a game that had a very busy and high texture world with lots of models and different angles and colors, your CPU is the thing that creates that world. It knows where the stuff is, and it does so with data that's been stored in your RAM, which was loaded out of your hard drive, but it's your graphics card that figures out what it's supposed to look like based on where you're standing in the world. Without getting too off topic here, if you're somebody who likes math, I highly recommend you look up fast inverse square root, which is directly related to how three-dimensional worlds calculate perspectives. So that pretty much sums it up. There are other components worth mentioning, such as cooling systems or internal wireless cards, but really those are extras. So to summarize what I talked about so far, the case stores everything in a physical box, the power supply gives electricity to what needs it, the motherboard is the body that everything plugs into, the CPU does everything, RAM stores data that is needed for quick access, hard drives store everything that you have installed and the data that goes along with those programs, while the graphics card figures out how it's all supposed to look on your monitor.
Atera is the IT painkiller. Remote monitoring and management, remote access, help desk and ticketing, smart automations, patching, software deployment.
When we interact with computers, we're mainly looking at the screens. Tens and thousands of tiny little pixels that can light up in certain colors and change to create the images we see and interact with. So with a computer that can only think in numbers, how does the computer decide which pixel is supposed to be what color and at what time? Well, if you want to know, then you're in the right place. The colors that make up each individual pixel in your monitor are created with various compositions of the RGB color scheme. A certain amount of red, green, and blue with different amounts of each can create any color with any shade of any saturation, darkness, or lightness. Whenever you see the term RGB, this is what it's referring to, colors based off of combinations of red, green, and blue. Before we get to the numbers and software part of this, let's briefly talk about the physical component of how pixels work. There are actually quite a few different ways this is accomplished, and various methods have been used over the past few decades. I'm going to skip over CRT monitors because they're vastly outdated and function in a very different way than the other two type of monitors I want to talk about. Nevertheless, these monitors are very interesting, so I encourage you to look into how they work. There's really brilliant technology in these monitors. Let's start with LCD or liquid crystal display monitors. At the very back of these monitors is a white fluorescent light covered by a few thin layers of a unique substance known as liquid crystalline. On each side of this layer of liquid crystalline is a layer of polarizing filament, covered by a few thin layers of a unique substance known as liquid crystalline. On each side of this layer of liquid crystalline is a layer of polarizing filament, one negatively charged and the other positively charged. Now, because white light is the presence of all colors, the layers in front of this white light filter out the colors needed for each pixel. Each pixel on these filter screens has its frequency charged by electrical signals coming from the top and sides, causing it to let through a different color at a different time. Now, the second common type of monitor these days is the LED monitor, or light emitting diode. This works similarly to the LCD display, but instead of a single white fluorescent light at the back, it has a layer of LED pixels. Inside each pixel are 3 small LED lights, one dedicated to each color of the RGB spectrum. Of course, with various wavelengths being applied to each, the final color of the pixel is determined through a combination of the 3. While it may seem to be a problem that the lights inside each pixel might not be equally spaced depending on which colors are adjacent to others, when we zoom out and look at thousands of pixels on the screen, our eyes naturally blur them together. As needed. So now that we've established the physical side of this, let's move on to the numbers. Each red, green, and blue value has 255 different shades it can be, on a scale of black to the color in question. There are millions of different ways to combine each of these 3 numbers, and as a result, millions of possible colors we can represent. But while it's represented this way here, your computer isn't using 3 values of 255 to do this. Instead, it's using one single number that it reads in a very specific way. To figure out how a computer turns a number into a color, we need to first look briefly at what hexadecimal is. I've spoken in recent videos about binary and base 10. Base 10 is the counting system we've all used. We have the numbers 0 through 9, and once we get to 9, we add a digit to the left and flip the previous digit back to 0 and start over. Whenever all of the digits to the right are full, we add another digit to the left. Hexadecimal works the same way, but instead of having 10 values for each digit, as in decimal, or 2, as in binary, it has 16 symbols for each digit. This means that each digit to the left we add is an increasing power of 16 rather than one of 10. In our normal system, called decimal or base 10, this is the number of ones we have, this is the number of tens we have, this is the number of hundreds, the number of thousands, 10,000s, and so on. In hexadecimal, this first column is the number of ones we have, the second is the number of 16s, this is the number of 256s, the number of 4096s, and so on. Because we only have the digits 0 through 9, hexadecimal represents the numbers 10 through 15 by using uppercase letters. So counting up past 9 in hexadecimal would sound like 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then we add 1 to the left column and start again from 0. Hexadecimal is very common in computers because it relates well to binary. More on that later, but for now, let's talk about how does this turn into colors. Each pixel has these 3 colors, each represented by a number between 0 and 255, and as luck would have it, 2 digits of hexadecimal can also represent any number between 0 and 255. So each pixel on your screen has 6 digits of hexadecimal dedicated to it. With 6 digits of hexadecimal, we can represent any number from 0 to 16,777,215. Each individual value of this number is interpreted by your monitor as a different color, so each pixel reads that hexadecimal number and can become any number between those. Now going back to RGB, every 2 digits of this 6-digit hexadecimal number are dedicated to one of the RGB colors. The first 2 digits are used to determine the amount of blue, the second 2 are used to determine the amount of green, and the final 2 are used to determine the amount of red. Notice that as I increase the various values, their hexadecimal values scale very neatly within the rows of 2, while the equivalent decimal value sort of jumps all over the place. As human beings, we really like base 10 numbers, likely because we have 10 fingers. So why does this method of determining colors use something as strange as base 16? The reason for this is that computers actually have a fairly difficult time working with base 10. I talked in my video on binary, which can be found in the description, that everything computers do essentially comes down to numbers that use base 2. Now 16 is a power of 2, while 10 is not. So computers don't have much trouble converting numbers from base 2 into base 16, but have to go a bit out of their comfort zone to represent things in base 10. They can still do it incredibly fast, as you can see here, but when they have to calculate tens of thousands of pixels dozens of times a second and several other values, it's far more efficient for them to do it their way, which is with powers of 2. So that concludes the basics of how computers determine what colors to display on the screen. As always, I encourage you to dive into the massive amount of information available on this topic, especially when it comes to the cathode ray tube monitors, which again, I love and are such brilliant pieces of technology. I plan to make many more monitors, which again, I love and are such brilliant pieces of technology. I plan to make many more explainer videos like this in the future, so if you have any requests or ideas of topics you want me to cover, leave them in the comments. Feedback is always helpful, as is liking, subscribing, and sharing, and as always, thanks for watching.
Yes, sir, of course.
Some internet providers claim they offer gigabit speeds, but here's the catch. Their upload speeds are often much slower than their
Often referred to as the brain.
Now, that's with your computer, that's your phone. Let's see, what are you capable? What about my car? Is my car capable of 2025? Let's see. Let's see the least favorite.
This is Doug DeMuro, and today I'm going to talk about my least favorite car features. Everybody asks me this. I do a lot of videos on quirks and features. Everybody says, what is the most interesting? What is the coolest? What is the craziest? And every year, as a result of that, I do a compendium of quirk and feature, top 10 quirks of the year. And today I'm going to talk about my least favorite features. What are the things that really annoy me? Let's do it.
If you've been watching my videos for a long time, you'll remember I used to take my cars to CarMax to see what they'd offer me as a trade-in value. These videos were fun and popular as they would often give me a wildly inaccurate number for the cars. Submit your cool car to Cars and Bids and just on Cars and look at how much these cars sold for on Cars.
Okay, features that really annoy me on cars. I've got maybe 7 of them, and they really annoy me. There's probably more. If I really spent time thinking, I could probably come up with another one of these videos. And if you like this one, you know, maybe I'll do another because I'll get really annoyed. Okay, first, least favorite. Features that I like the least, hate the most. Number 1, on General Motors products. You know General Motors? Chevy and them? When you walk up to the car and you unlock the door, the reverse lights turn on. This happens also when you lock the car and walk away for like a while. The reverse lights stay on. So you're driving through a parking lot looking for a spot. It's a difficult, it's a parking lot. It's packed. You can't find any spots. There's a Chevy Tahoe with its backup lights on. So what do? You sit there. You wait. Hey, they're backing up. They're coming right out of their spot. No, they're not. There's not even someone in the car. Why did General Motors do this to us? Why did they do this to the human population as a whole? And you know what the crazy thing is? They're still doing it. This is still how General Motors does their like nighttime lighting. Like if you lock a car, unlock a car, the headlights turn on, which is normal and that's fine, and the reverse lights turn on. To this day, they're still doing this, and it absolutely annoys me. And I've been in this situation before where I've been waiting for a Chevy Tahoe to leave a spot and there's no one in it. But it's actually even more annoying when you're behind behind the person waiting, and there's no one in the car, and you know that because you know this is a terrible General Motors design flaw, and so you have to wait for a person to try to pull into a spot that isn't ever going to be free, and you're sitting there like, no, there's nobody in that car, so you honk your horn, and they're like, this person's leaving, and it's like, no, they're not. Not only are they not leaving, they're not even in the car. Right. They're coming. They just parked. It is a horrible design flaw, and they don't even consider it a flaw. It's by design. It's a bad feature, and I wish they would change it. And on the subject, by the way, of brake lights and lighting, another thing that I really don't like and that really annoys me is when the turn signal is a brake light. This is just a personal annoyance.
Terrible.
Turn signals should be orange.
Right.
Okay? That's the way it is. Turn signals should be orange. For some reason, in Europe, all the turn signals are orange, but in the States, some of them are orange, some of them are red, some of them are the entire brake light.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I think in Europe there might be a mandate to have orange turn signals, amber as they're called. But in the States, there is no such mandate, and for some reason, the automakers change it. Like, my Mercedes-Benz station wagon has a red turn signal. In Europe, that same car is orange, and I'm thinking, why did you do this? Isn't it cheaper just to make the same part twice? There is no mandate in the States that you cannot have an orange turn signal. In fact, many, many cars do. But for some reason, some cars don't, and it's annoying. Orange turn signals, and they shouldn't be the whole brake light. That is the other annoyance. In today's world of LEDs, you can't separate the brake light and the turn signal into two units. This is still going on, and it's actually going on in some really high-end cars. There are some very expensive Mercedes, Audi, and Porsche vehicles that have the entire brake light becomes the turn signal, and I'm sitting here thinking, no, separate them. Why are you doing this to us? I don't think it's actually less safe. People, Instagram commenters, that's the kind of thing they would say. I don't think it's so safe, but it is annoying. It's like, come on, just give us an orange turn signal and make it separate from the brake light. That's what God intended.
Right.
Okay, next thing. Oh, this is another one that I really hate. Toyota, are you listening? Are you listening to this video? Okay, you're driving along, your windshield's dirty. You spray it with fluid, and then the wipers wipe. Everything's fine up until this point. The wipers wipe, they get the fluid off, they stop wiping. You're happy. And then like 6 seconds later, they wipe again. They call it a courtesy wipe. It is the most annoying thing that could ever exist. Because what happens is by the time the courtesy wipe happens, all of the stuff that's been washed off it's already dry. And so the courtesy wipe, all it does is it smears the dry stuff that was dry all over the windshield. Why do this? If I want one more wipe of the wipers after I'm done washing the windshield, I will do it manually myself. Let me do it. It is not for you to do automatically at some later time that you decide. Now, there are some cars out there that do this. To their credit, you can go into the infotainment system and turn off the courtesy wipe, which I do. But if you don't have this turn offable, or even if you do, because just don't do it in the first place, it is so annoying. If I'm washing the windshield, the wipers go. Once I stop the wipers, I can manually handle it from here. I do not want the car to randomly throw up some extra wipe 7 seconds later and ruin everything, which is what always happens. I hate it. Just let me choose. Put me in control. Okay, next one. Next feature I don't like. Many cars still do this, and it annoys me to no end.
Choose to live big.
Two things, actually. Cars that have the lock and unlock button on the key fob as the same. What? This is so incredibly annoying. The lock and unlock button need to be separate. For years in Land Rovers, I had one in Porsches, and many other cars, the lock and unlock button were the same. It was lock and unlock. So you press it, and the lights would flash, and you're like, well, is it locked or is it unlocked? I don't know because they're the same button. And I remember when I had a Range Rover that had this, I would press the button, the lights would flash, I think, twice for lock and once for unlock or something. You had to know it. You had to memorize it. And I would never trust it. And I would always pull on the door handle just to make sure it was locked because it was poorly designed. And I remember one time I went to the Land Rover dealer and I said, listen, I would love it if you can you give me 2 buttons? And they laughed at me. They said, no, that's not how it was designed. Now, that is annoying to me. The lock and unlock should be separate on a key fob because otherwise it's hard to tell whether it's locked or unlocked. That is annoying. But more annoying than that is when a car honks its horn to let you know the doors are locked. Please, as a person who is often outside filming with audio, can you please stop the horn honks? We do not need the noise pollution in our cities. Think of the children. No, specifically, think of the YouTubers who are in a parking lot somewhere that you can't see behind a big fence and they're annoyed with the constant horn honking. I hate it so much. I hate that. I don't understand. You know, it's funny because this isn't something I would have ever even thought about or complained about until Rivian showed up. And when a Rivian locks its doors, it makes a little tweety bird sound. And if you're not paying attention, you would just think it's a bird, like flying by tweeting. But if you are paying attention, as you would be if you're locking your car, you know that your car is locked. And it's actually an unbelievable idea. It doesn't contribute to noise pollution, and yet it solves the problem of how to let people know that the door lock has happened. And it's a dream. When someone locks their Rivian near me when I'm filming my videos, I can keep going. When someone presses their horn, I'm like, bam, bam, it's like, shut up! Why are you doing this? It's so loud. It's so annoying. It is really incredible that Rivian was able to kind of come up with some idea that they even thought that this was an idea that needed changing. It never would cross my mind until they changed it. And now I want everybody else to do it as well. It's a really, really smart feature. And it's really annoying to me now when I hear all the bam, I'm locked. Okay, do you have to honk at me? Like it's, ugh. Okay, next up on my list of features I hate. This one's gonna be a little complicated to explain, but I'm gonna try. And that is stuff that requires other stuff. This is a constant issue I have with cars, especially when I'm filming my videos and I'm trying out all the features. And I realize a lot of features you can't do unless you do a bunch of other stuff first. And I've noticed that Hyundai and Genesis are the worst at this. So Hyundai's got this feature where you can press a button on the key fob and the car will automatically move forward, like out of a parking spot. And I used to demonstrate this in my videos, and I stopped demonstrating it because it is so hard to actually get it to work. A good car, engineered and designed well. You walk up to the car, you push the button, the car moves out of the spot. That's not how it works in the Hyundai and Kia. In a Hyundai and Kia, first you gotta lock the doors. Even if they're already locked, gotta lock them. Then you gotta start the car. Okay. Then you gotta press the button, but it doesn't work most of the time. If something is near it, and I'm not saying like right behind it, near it, the car, nah. But the car can't tell you that because you're holding a key fob, so it just doesn't work. And I remember years ago, I filmed like the G80, and I remember I was trying to get this to work like for the opening scene, and it took me like 20 takes before this feature that they advertised would actually do what it advertised because I hadn't met the 87 conditions that it needed. You press that button down and hold it, which eventually will turn on the car, which turns on the G80. The G80 will turn on. And I noticed this on a lot of different cars, a lot of different stuff. Another good example is power tailgates. Okay, so I'm pulling up to the curb to pick someone up. They've got a bag with them. They want to put it in the tailgate, in the cargo area. I push the button for the power tailgate, nothing happens. Push it again, nothing happens. Hold it down, nothing happens. It turns out in some cars, the car has to be in park for the tailgate to open. Why? If I want to open the tailgate while I'm driving down the street, just let me do the thing. And so as a result, okay, you got to put it in park. I was in a car recently, you had to turn the car off. Tailgate wouldn't open unless the car was off. So if all you're doing, you're at the airport, you're sliding in, picking somebody up. You push the tailgate, they put the thing in, they get in. 2 seconds. No. In this car, pull over to the side, put the car in park, turn the car off, then press the button and the tailgate would open. And it's like, why do I have to do a checklist like I'm flying like I'm trying to ditch a 757? Why am I going through a whole it's ridiculous, absolutely insane, incredibly annoying. I really hate this lawyer-driven, liability-afraid stuff that requires stuff. And I'm always happy when an automaker just ignores it. You want to open the front trunk, push this button, it opens. Boom. You're in drive, fine. You figure it out. And I think in this liability-driven world, that's probably something a lot of automakers can't do. But I will say it is worse on some cars and better on others. Some automakers are a little bit less afraid. And boy, would it help a lot of them to be less afraid, because it's very annoying. Okay, next up, getting down to the least favorite new car features. Another one is dash lights that are so bright that people don't turn on their headlights. This has become a real annoyance for me. And I've noticed it especially on Nissans. Now that gauge clusters are a screen, it used to be that your gauge cluster was dark until you turn on your headlights and then it would be backlit. Well, now that gauge clusters are a screen, they're always lit up. And so a lot of people, they don't see their gauge cluster being dark, and that's their sign to turn on their headlights. And so you're driving along, the streets are pretty well lit, but people will be driving along with their headlights completely off and absolutely no knowledge that their lights are off because their gauge screen is lit up. And it gets even worse because now cars have LED running lights that actually light things up pretty well. So if you're driving along, you got your LED running lights on, you can kind of see ahead of you, and you have your gauge screen on, and you think everything's fine. But the big problem here is that your tail lights are not illuminated. So it happened to me the other day. I was in the Carrera GT late at night. I was driving, come up behind somebody on the freeway, Grand Cherokee, tail lights completely not illuminated. It was a rental car. And the gauge cluster lights are bright because they're on, and the LED running lights are on. And so he thinks his lights are on because he sees ahead of him with his LED running lights. But I'm driving behind him on the freeway, and he's got no tail lights at all. And he hasn't flipped his headlights on. And this has become less of a problem as more cars have gotten automatic headlights. But a lot of times people turn the headlights off automatic, or a valet will do it, or you knock it by accident, whatever. And some cars still don't have them. And so this bright gauge cluster and bright LED has really, I think, actually made it worse, the people using their headlights. And it's kind of an annoying thing when you're driving along and that person doesn't have their taillights illuminated, or their only headlights are a set of LED running lights that are really not bright enough to be illuminating what they want to see. Okay, final least favorite car feature. I've saved my most controversial one for last.
Let me hear this.
The Honda HR-V with impressive sporty.
Because I think most car enthusiasts watching this video are not going to agree with me, but I really hate this feature, and that is old school automatic transmission levers. Back in the day, you want to shift into gear, you put your hand on your automatic transmission lever, you pull it from P to drive, down this whole thing, and then it's in drive. These days, in most modern cars, if you want to shift into gear, there's like a dial you pull or a button or something electronic, and there's no longer an actual physical lever. Now, one benefit of this is that the buttons for the transmission selection has freed up space in the center, and so that's allowed us to have bigger cup holders, wireless charging pads, more storage, etc. But the really big benefit of this feature is that it means you cannot get out of the car without putting the car in park, because in the electronic gear selectors, the moment you open the door, they automatically go into park. However, with an old school gear selector that has to physically be in position, if you open the door, it will stay in drive. Now, car enthusiasts watching this video, they'll say, I don't need that. I'm never going to forget to shift into park before I open the door. Yeah, right. Well, you say that, but there are a lot of videos on YouTube of people who thought the very same thing, and then their car goes over a parking curb and off a cliff or whatever. Like, this happens much, much, much more than you'd think. And obviously it's a safety factor too for children and little things crawling around. Having the car automatically go into park when the door is opened is a really good safety feature that is a real benefit of the modern electronic transmission selector. And there still are cars with old school gear levers. My Toyota Sequoia is one of them. And it's very disappointing to me. We got rid of my wife's Volvo XC60, which also still had it, and I thought we were coming to the end of the old school shift lever, and unfortunately the Sequoia still got it. And I really legitimately think it's a safety hazard. It takes up too much space. It is something that has been improved upon, and more automakers need to adopt it. I think we should be at the end of the physical old school shift lever. And again, I know a lot of people are going to be watching saying, that ain't ever going to be me. And people say that right up until it is. And there are a ton of great YouTube videos of people, especially in road rage, right? They get out of their car to yell at somebody, but they're so heated and they're moving so fast, they just start yelling, and then their car starts like taking off behind them, because they forgot to shift into park. But if you want to do good road rage, buddy, but they're so heated and they're moving so fast, they just start yelling, and then their car starts like taking off behind them, because they forgot to shift into park. But if you want to do good road rage, you want to have an electronic gear selector. That's a top tip.
So there you go. Those are my least favorite car features. I'll think on some more. I bet shift so fast. Right? They get out of their car to yell at somebody, but there's so many YouTube videos of people, especially in road rage, right? They get out of their car to yell at somebody, but they're so heated and they're moving so fast, they just start yelling, and then their car starts like taking off behind them, because they forgot to shift into park. But if you want to do good road rage, you want to have an electronic gear selector. That's a top tip. So there you go. Those are my least favorite car features. I'll think on some more. I bet I can come up with some more. There's a lot of things that annoy me. There's more things that make me happy, but there are some things that annoy me, and those are a few of them. Goodbye.
That's my guy.
Does this look like your internet provider? Surprise fees, one-time charges, and sudden price hikes hidden in the fine print.
New this morning, our Hearst partners at Car and Driver have unveiled their annual 10 best list for 2025. The list recognizes the 10 best cars and the 10 best trucks and SUVs on the market under $110,000 that fulfill their mission while delivering value and have a great driving experience. This morning, we welcome Car and Driver Editor-in-Chief Tony Quiroga. Tony, good morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. First of all, explain for people, what's the criteria to actually make this list? And ultimately, how do you guys select the winners?
Well, we pick the all the cars from 2025 that are new and are on sale before the end of January. As you mentioned, we have a price cap of $110,000, but we do value a great deal. The less expensive the car, the more interesting it is to us, because it's more difficult to make a great car inexpensive than it is to make an expensive car great.
I get that completely. And of course, people that are looking to save and still have, car that has a great value, they are going to be very interested. So we don't want to make them wait any longer. Let's talk about the list. Who's on the list of the top 10 best cars for 2025?
Well, on the list, we have a lot of them return. So if you win 10 best, you can come back and defend your position every year, which guarantees that it's not just the best of what's new, but it's the best of what's on the market. So we do have a lot of returning cars like the Honda Accord, the Honda Civic, the Chevrolet Corvette. We have some newcomers with the Mercedes-Benz E450 and the Tesla Model 3 Long Range. We hadn't tested a Model 3 Tesla in a long time, and we were delighted by the advancements and the updates that they made to it.
All right, and talk about the top 10 trucks and SUVs.
We're really excited about the Ford Ranger Raptor. It's a performance Ford Ranger. It starts at just under $60,000, which really isn't that much money for a pickup these days. And the other new one we're excited about is the Volkswagen ID Buzz. It's their new electric van. It has 3 rows of seats. There aren't a lot of electrics with that much seating. It's super fun to drive, and it looks amazing.
Tony, was there anything that surprised you about?
It's van. About is the Volkswagen ID Buzz. It's their new electric van. It has 3 rows of seats. There aren't a lot of electrics with that much seating. It's super fun to drive, and it looks amazing.
Tony, was there anything that surprised you about some of the cars that made the list this year? The cars, trucks, or SUVs?
It's a returner. It's a car that returned that won last year, the Chevy Trax. It starts at just over $20,000, and it continues to delight us with how expensive it feels. Like I said, it's not easy to make a inexpensive car feel great, but that is definitely a great car that is inexpensive.
For people that are in the market now looking for cars, looking for something that's, pretty affordable, specifically for a family, is there one that you'd recommend?
Definitely the Chevy Trax. I'd have them look at the Kia Telluride. That's another one that I think this is its 5th year on the list. It's spectacular. It's a wonderful 3-row SUV. It starts in the mid-30s. And it gets more expensive from there, but it's a terrific vehicle at that price.
Yeah, well, Tony, thank you for being with us this morning. Where can our viewers actually get this full article and get all the details?
Please visit carandriver.com, where you'll see all the coverage of our 10 best lists.
Awesome. And folks at home, we do have the QR code that's on your screen right now for you to be able to check it out. Tony, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
When I started Volkswagen right now. Let me see the back of it. The inside of the car. So you got 3 rows. Hey, and it does. That's what's up. I like that. All right, moving on. We're gonna watch us some motivation, and then we're gonna get up out of here for the day. What am I capable of? We're gonna get us a decent length one though.
Realizing that I'm not smart was probably one of the best things to happen to me. So smart is a subjective term, but if we look at a bell curve, most people are gonna fall within the average territory. And you might ask, why am I talking about this? It's because I really believe that realizing this really transformed my work ethic and my entire outlook on life. But let me explain how I got to this point. So when I was a kid, my dad would constantly tell me these stories about how he wasn't smart, but he was dedicated. And anything in life he wanted to achieve, he knew that if he put in the hours and the time, he could do it. But I would always hear that and just kind of roll my eyes. Because for me, I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to work hard. I wanted to be able to do as little work as possible and still get good grades on my tests so that I could spend all my time playing video games or whatever. So I went to a very particular high school known specifically for its academics. This was definitely not your like run-of-the-mill high school. So there's about 500 people in the senior class, and the majority of the class is just like ridiculously smart. Most of the class would end up in like top colleges across America. And I remember I would always be confused watching movies like Mean Girls or whatever, where high schools were separated into groups, like the jocks, the cheerleaders, because instead, everyone at my school was basically the same kind of person, grouped up based on how smart they were. So when I was in that high school, I was constantly surrounded by people that were smarter than me. And I'm not even talking about just in terms of test scores. It was just very obvious and apparent just the level of intelligence some of these people had. I would study physics with my friends, and some of them would just read over it in a few minutes and get the concept immediately. Meanwhile, I'd be sitting over there rereading the concept for hours without getting it. So growing up in a community like this and with friends like this, you'll develop one of two mindsets. The first one being, damn, my friends are so smart, I'm gonna have to work so much harder to be like them. Or the second one, damn, my friends are so smart, I can't be that far off from them. I was definitely the latter. The hard part came when I tried to mimic their behavior. So when you're around people that have just a really high level of intelligence, they don't really act like people at other high schools. Some of my friends would just study like 20 minutes before a test and they get perfect scores. Meanwhile, I try to do the same thing and I get like a C or like I fail the test. For the longest time, even though I tried to mimic what my friends were doing, I just couldn't achieve the same result. But I always deluded myself into thinking that it wasn't because I wasn't smart, it was because I didn't try hard enough. And if I did actually try, I would be on their same level, for sure. So about 2.5 years out of college, I was working in a startup and I wasn't really happy about my position there. I really wanted a new job, but I would do interviews and I would completely bomb them because of the problems I had mentioned before. I've done poorly in a lot of interviews in my life, but one sticks out specifically because I didn't even try. This was a job that I really wanted. I was told by the recruiters to focus on JavaScript fundamentals, and I probably wouldn't even be asked any actual coding questions, and that I would do great if I just studied the concepts overall. I decided, you know what, this is gonna be easy. I have plenty of time to study, and a few hours on the weekend should be good enough. So I scheduled the interview on a Monday morning so I would be able to study all weekend, and I ended up literally waiting until the last second. I woke up at 6 a.m. 2 hours before the interview to do my first bits of studying. Can you guess how it went? When I got the detailed feedback from my recruiter, his list of feedback was so long and so extensive and detailed, I must have been one of the worst candidates he ever interviewed. And I just remember sitting there right after the interview, unhappy about my performance, unhappy about the job I was currently at, and unhappy about my future job prospects. And more importantly, I was just angry for letting myself put in such little effort into this whole thing. And realizing that in the past 10 years, I hadn't changed my mindset at all. My past self always thought that when I was older, I was gonna try harder. And then I'll be able to look back at all my high school years as kind of like a formative period. But would my past self be happy with my future self if they saw that I was making the exact same mistakes? It was definitely one of those moments where I realized nothing changes in life unless you make the change. So you might ask, what did thinking that I was smart have to do with any of this? Well, for a long time, one of my biggest problems was that I wouldn't take other people's advice that seriously. I would just assume that they didn't know what they were talking about and that their advice wouldn't apply to me, you know, because I was smart But failing all those interviews and coming to a point where I was getting well into my 20s really made me realize, damn, I don't think I'm that smart. And being lazy isn't really an excuse either. And realizing that anything you want, if it's something worth achieving, is going to take time, pain, and effort. And then full circle, I thought about that advice from my dad that I had been ignoring for all those years about how he wasn't smart and that he was just dedicated towards his craft. That's when it all really clicked. Improvement in life is all about slow, incremental change. And what I wanted most in my life at that point was to advance my career. And hoping to pass interviews by studying for like 10 minutes before and hoping that they would ask a question that I already studied before was completely crazy and unsustainable. Everything I wanted in my life, I had to actively point it out as a problem and figure out how to fix it. So for my lack of social and interpersonal skills, I started to read books. And for my goal of getting into a large tech company, I started to plan out a schedule of how I would study for these technical interviews and get into the companies. And I went online and looked for research from other people who had went through the same process so I could follow their mistakes and their techniques. And I would never ignore advice because I thought I was smarter than other people, because chances are I wasn't.
That was a good talk. All right.
Ignorant about who you are. Now there's an upside to that too, which also is that you're also ignorant about who you could be. And so the discovery of that, is some reward for the horror of determining who you actually are. And then I would say, well, then you watch yourself. You watch yourself like you're watching a stranger. You watch what you say and you listen. And you think, well, what sort of person would say that? And how am I reacting emotionally when I'm communicating in that manner? Is that making me feel stronger or weaker? Is it filling me with shame? Is it helping my confidence? Am I laying out a lie? Am I deceiving myself and other people? Am I adopting this personality at parties that is designed to impress and to amuse, and it comes across as nothing but self-centered narcissism? What are my dark fantasies? What are my aggressive fantasies? What is it that I'm willing to do? What am I interested in so that I'll spontaneously pursue it? What do I procrastinate about and why? What am I unwilling to do? What do I think is good? What do I congratulate myself for accomplishing? And what do I berate myself for failing to confront and to implement? Those are all incredibly complicated questions, and you don't know the answers to them. So that's a start. And then in terms of potential, well, you'll discover a little bit more about your potential as you discover who you are, especially the darker parts of yourself, because then you discover your potential for mayhem. There's some real utility in that. It's actually something that strengthens you, because the first thing that a realization like that can in fact produce is the ambition to incorporate that dangerousness into a higher order personality. And that can make you implacable. That can make you someone who can say no when you need to say no. That can make you someone who won't avoid necessary conflict. And so that's unbelievably useful. And so that's one of the potentials that you might discover. The other thing you do to discover your potential is you challenge yourself. It's like Rule 4 in my book, 12 Rules for Life, is compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. And that's kind of a good way to start this. It's like, well, take a bit of a look at yourself and think about what's not so good that you could improve, that you should improve by your own standards, and that you would improve, and set yourself a little goal. Maybe you're not studying at all and you're at university. Or maybe you're at work and you've got this stack of paper there, and you haven't looked at that damn stack for like a month, and you know that you should be. And you're bothering yourself at night because you're avoiding that. You think, well, I've avoided that stack of paper completely for 1 month. I'm quite a coward when it comes to whatever snakes might be hidden in that stack of paper. How about tomorrow I just put that stack of paper in front of me on my desk and I glance through it for 15 seconds. See if I can do that. It's like, well, you set yourself a goal of improvement. It's a humble goal, because really, are you such a coward that the best that you can bloody well manage after a month of avoidance is 15 seconds of exposure to a stack of paper? It could easily be. You've been avoiding it. You're obviously afraid of it. And so the situation could be that dismal and dire. And you might think, well, geez, it's no balm to my ego. It's not fostering the strength of my ego to recognize in myself someone who could only withstand 15 seconds of exposure to that thing I'm afraid of. And so that's a form of humility too. It's like there's things you could do to improve, and you know what they are. And there's small steps that you could take, that you might take, that would put you in that direction. And then the question is, are you big enough to take those small steps? Are you capable of grappling with the fact that you're fundamentally flawed to the point where you have to break things down into almost childlike steps in order to manage them? And the answer to that is, yeah, you are. And that's the lot of, I don't know if it's the lot of everyone. Most people have things they avoid, and they're afraid of. So I would say to some degree, it's the lot of everyone. People vary in the degree to which they've conquered that. And you do meet people from time to time who are extraordinarily disciplined. But most of the time they've got disciplined in exactly this manner. It's through slow incremental improvement. And then you challenge yourself. It's like, well, could I do this? That would be better. Then you find out. And then you think, well, is there something slightly larger and more challenging that I could do? That would be better. And you try it and you find out. And as you try it and you find out, generally you get better at it and you can take on larger and larger challenges. You take responsibility for yourself. That's part of standing up straight with your shoulders back. It's like, take on the world, man, but only at the level that you can manage. When you're ignorant and biased and deeply flawed and immature, it's where everyone starts. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew, but it doesn't mean that you can't wrestle with part of reality. Some part that's small enough so that you have a good shot at victory. And to put yourself together, the first steps towards that is to allow yourself to be a fool, right? It's because you don't know what you're doing. You have to admit that. And there's going to be a loss of ego or destruction of ego, arrogant ego that necessarily accompanies that. But you need the loss of that arrogant ego because it's precisely what's interfering with your movement forward. It's part of the adversarial process, mythologically speaking, that stops moral progress. You're too proud of who you think you are to notice what you're like so that you could change properly. You don't want to sacrifice that part of yourself. It's probably associated with some delusion that helps you maintain a positive, although very fragile self-image, in the absence of genuine effort. It's not to be recommended. You know yourself by watching and paying attention. It's watching like you're a snake. A snake watches like cold-bloodedly, with no emotional reaction, just to see what's there. It doesn't allow, symbolically speaking, doesn't allow what is wanted or desired to interfere with what is observed. So you watch yourself like that, as if you don't know who you are. Well, that's the beginning. And then you challenge yourself continually to see how far past yesterday you can push today and tomorrow, and to continually experiment with expanding the domains not only of your competence, but of your ability to increase that competence. And the upper limit to that is proportional to the moral effort that you put into it. The more that's guided by the highest of all possible visions, right? The alliance with the highest of all possible conceivable good. And the more it's accompanied by truth in speech and action, the more you will develop your potential. And you also, I suppose, have to be willing to undertake that as an adventure, because it's a hell of a thing to bear that kind of responsibility. It takes a person out of the ordinary. It takes them out of themselves. And there's an alienation and an isolation that goes along with that, and a great sorrow, all of that together. But there's deep meaning to be had in it, and there isn't anything better that you can do. So that's the answer to that question.
All right, y'all. I'm going to holla at y'all tomorrow on Find Your Way Wednesday. Peace.
You're going to have a feeling. If you think God is punishing you, you're going to have a very different feeling from that meaning than you think God is challenging you or this problem is a gift from God. How many follow here? Say I. People oftentimes have trouble in their relationship. You know why? In the beginning of a relationship, what's your focus? Are you trying to get them to give you things? Is that the primary focus?
Yep.
When you really love somebody, what will you do for them? Shout it out. What will you do? Anything. What will you do? What will you do? If someone says to you, would you take out the trash? Go take out the trash. What else can I do for you? In the beginning. But after 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years, or 70 years, somewhere between 7 days and 70 years, they go, could you take out the trash? You go, what do I look like? Your janitor? I don't know what it is. We used to have so much passion. What happened? If you do what you did in the beginning of the relationship, at the end of the relationship, there won't be in it. Because in the beginning, it wasn't a trade. You weren't measuring your meaning. You were focused on how to give. How many can relate to this here? Say, I.
Yes. Hey, so we got to tie it up for today. Right here, we're getting a little bit too deep before the end of the show because I only got a couple more minutes left. But I appreciate y'all for tuning in. But more so, narrow down your focus so you can regain some of that energy that you're losing just by being distracted or, you know, having your focus in a bunch of different places that's not bringing you back your health, your peace of mind, your wealth, your abundance, anything like that. So I would play the rest of this, but I don't want to. We're gonna go ahead and end it right here. Tech Tuesdays tomorrow. We'll be back, and I will have more to say about that tomorrow. So this has been another episode of Expansion Pack. I'm your host, Dan F. Man. It's good to be in here with y'all for another week. Y'all go check out that inauguration or something. Inauguration. Let me see if I can get on the algorithm for that. Inauguration. Anyway, I'm gonna holler at y'all tomorrow. This is DGTA TV. Peace.
Everything on me? No. When I won Worlds, I bet everything on the Pokemon that I brought. My friends and I brought Pokemon that nobody else thought could win, but it was one of the best teams that I've ever used. And it was these overlooked Pokemon that gave us a major advantage into the most popular team in the tournament. Ever since then, I've been trying to build another team just as game-breaking, where battles are won before they even begin. But turns out, that's really hard, and in trying to recapture the magic, it's felt like I've
things. It's so easy to fall into the trap of self-doubt. Sometimes we doubt our abilities, question our worth, or feel like we're not good enough. But I'm here to tell you that you are capable of amazing things. You have unlimited potential inside of you, and the universe is waiting for you to tap into it. Your dreams are not too big for you. They were meant for you. Don't let negative thoughts or other people's opinions make you believe otherwise. The truth is, you have all the tools you need to succeed. Whether it's resilience, creativity, determination, or heart. You've already proven that you can face obstacles and rise above them. You've done it before, and you will do it again. Today, remind yourself of your strength, your skills, and your incredible potential. I am capable of amazing things, and I am ready to embrace them. 3. I am in control of my thoughts.